So first of all, from the young protesters, I see, a beautiful act of love and of humanity, and it's incredibly inspiring. Um, and I also think that what this is, it is of course a protest against what's going on in Gaza, but it's also a protest against the utter corruption and misguidedness of our politicians, our political class, our media on this and so many other issues. I think that people are seeing this struggle as emblematic of many other struggles as well. And that's incredibly powerful. And it's also deeply moving to me as a person who, like I said, I've been with this issue in this country for better than 50 years. I've never seen anything like this. Um, the the response, the repressive response, we're in the era of the neoliberal university in which, the administrations take their orders from their wealthy donors.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's really, as far as I'm concerned, it's really just that simple.
I think you're right. When I got fired from CNN, I also got called into the administration's office at Temple University, where I was a tenured professor with an endowed chair. And the most striking thing wasn't the fact that they met with me that morning and said, "Hey, something's going to happen to you. We're either going to fire you, take away your chair, suspend you, censure you, or do nothing. And we promise you, we're not going to do nothing."
Wow.
And so I had to wait like the entire day to find out that I'd been censured by the university, which was stunning. I was the first person, I believe, in the university's history to be censured. And the board of the chair of the board of trustees said that he had never seen an act of of just a moral transgression like mine before. That he, by the way, was the personal attorney of Bill Cosby, who also is an alum of Temple University. Interesting factoid. But what more interesting though was a few months later, when the dust settled a bit, and the president and provost called me into their office and said, "We don't necessarily think you're anti-Semitic, and after talking to you and now studying River to the Sea, we understand that you're not anti-Semitic. But we still haven't been able to fully calculate the amount of donations we lost and the amount of wills that we're no longer written into.
Yeah.
So we'd like you to think about how you can possibly compensate the university and make us whole for all of the financial losses that we've incurred because of you speaking out."
Oh my God. Oh, well,
So
there you have it.
A concrete kind of example.
There you have it.
Example of what you're talking about.
At least they were being honest with you.
It was. I wish they lied a little bit.
Yeah,
let me get Giovanni said, "Lie to me a little bit." I was
amazing.
Actually shocked. It was sobering.
Yeah.
Like they were like, "Look, this
amazing.
isn't about Palestine or Israel or anti-Semitism at this point. It's about we got a business to run."
Yeah. I mean, there are, of course, committed Zionists in these institutions. So I don't want to overlook the ideological component,
Right.
but
sure.
Basically, I do think it's primarily about about bucks, and and I think that it's about bucks. It's not just about private donations. It's also about this sense of vulnerability to the withdrawal of federal funding. With it being such a the sort of the pro-Israel sentiment is still highly bipartisan. Yes, there are a few Democrats now who are sort of questioning our policies and aren't going along with all of the pro-Israel dictates, but most of them still are. And we've seen any number of initiatives to whether it's to institutionalize the IHRA, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism, and to apply that, in the allocation of federal funding and that sort of thing. All of these, I think, are factors in the university's responses.
So that's a great pivot to the last thing I wanted to ask you about, which is the power of not just international law, but let's just say the law more broadly. I mean, you just gave the example of the IHRA definition. And for those that don't know, that's the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. The person who constructed that definition of anti-Semitism, ironically, said this shouldn't be used or codified in law. That's not what the purpose of it was. But there are multiple ways that anti-Semitism has been defined under the IHRA definition, from things that we may all agree with, like anti-Semitic caricatures or Holocaust denial, or maybe even double standards against Israel, although that's a more complicated and messy one. But then there are things like challenging Israel's right to self-determination. And the example they give for that one is saying that the construction or the creation of the state of Israel is a racist endeavor. I'm doing it off the top of my head, so I might be word for word. Right. Basically saying that the formation of Israel is a racist endeavor. Or comparing Israel to, or the actions of the state practices or actions of Israel to that of Nazi Germany. So under the IHRA definition, at least three things that George and I have talked about today would be considered anti-Semitic. So if we had this conversation on a university stage, as opposed to on YouTube, the university could lose funding, there could be charges brought up, and we could lose our jobs. I mean, by the IHRA definition, Hannah Arendt, one of the great Jewish American scholars, one of the scholars of genocide and Holocaust, and certainly no one would call Hannah Arendt an anti-Semite by any, or even a self-hating Jew by any stretch. But nevertheless, Hannah Arendt comparing the actions of a Zionist militia against an Arab village to a Nazi soldier would be an act of anti-Semitism by virtue of the IHRA definition. The reason why I'm bringing this all up is because this is no longer just a really bad, overly expansive definition of anti-Semitism being wielded by the ADL. If the Senate approves this, and I suspect they will, the House has already approved it, we're going to see this as federal law. And to your point, George, the universities, K-12 education, a high school teacher can't talk about maybe can't talk about the Deir Yassin massacre in the way that you might need to be historically accurate. The law is going to actually reinforce and protect political Zionism.